This is Eric Miskell with EMS Now. Welcome to this edition of EMS Now Up Close. It's that time of the year when we call in Dieter Weiss from Germany to find out all about the EMS industry in Europe. Dieter Weiss, as many of you know, is the preeminent market researcher of the EMS industry for Europe. We always appreciate getting caught up with Dieter because as an old market researcher myself, I find that his methodologies and what he does and produces for the industry is excellent. So Dieter, welcome again, sir. Thank you for taking time to join with us today and to put up with my questioning once more. So I want to do this in two parts with you today. I want to talk about process and then talk about the content that comes out of it. Because as a market researcher, it's really your process and the methodologies that you apply that influence the data that you produce. So I want to start in some basic ways. We don't have to belabor the issues, but let's start with define Europe as you use it for the sizing purposes and the research you do.
Well, first of all, the main purpose of my work is to support the European EMS industry with good market data, because you can only make a good decision based on good and reliable data. That is the main issue. And I am working in this field now for more than 20 years. Doing it under the brand Informa for the last 6 years. And I have built this database, which you know, of about 2,200 companies. And in actual fact, it's 2,200 legal entities belonging to, I'd say, 1,870 companies. This number is changing more or less every day at the moment, because we see a lot of mergers and acquisitions going on at the moment. And you reported some of them yourself. Icor has been bought by Connect Group lately. And there are many other acquisitions that have gone on over the last 5 months. And I would say from my knowledge, as I'm involved in some of these things by supplying long lists or supplying other data, that there is much more in the pipeline. We will see a change. And you remember my presentation at Productronica 2 years ago, where I stated that within the next 10 years, 30% of the PCB companies, EMS companies will disappear. And that doesn't mean that they all go bankrupt, but they might be acquired, there might be mergers, acquisitions, whatsoever, to change this field. And therefore, it's very important to have a very professional way of analyzing this market. And what I do is, and that is something that is different to maybe the United States and to the Far East. In Europe, we have a legislation which requires that limited companies, which means which are not unlimited in their liabilities, they have to publish certain company results depending on the size of the company. It is clearly defined, and there are 3 criteria. Criteria number 1 is the revenue. Criteria number 2 is the headcount, and criteria number 3 is the balance sheet sum. Yeah? Those 3 numbers define whether a company is a big company, a medium-sized company, or a small company. And based on that, companies have to either file all of their results, which means a full balance sheet, the full P&L, plus a status report, an annual report in written form. That goes for the big companies. Then we have the medium-sized, they have to supply a balance sheet and the P&L starting with gross profit. And then for the small companies, they only have to report a balance sheet. So those are the three things, and they go, other than some people think they are not going into any Chamber of Commerce data, they go into the country company registers. And these country company registers are public. Everybody can access those company registers. I'd say in 50% of the cases, you can access the register free of charge. And in others, you have to pay a certain amount. For example, in Austria, I pay €7.41 per company and per year. In Sweden, it's, I think, €5.40 and so on. So I spend a lot of money getting all these data from the company registers. And first of all, and that is the most important thing, is first of all, you need to know how many players are there in the market.
Yeah.
You need to, as well, as a market researcher, you need to define what am I going to research. Yeah? And my research, and I know the word electronic manufacturing service, or in England often contract electronics manufacturing is used, or in France it is sous-traitance électronique. There are different words for the same thing. Now we have to look who is an EMS. The first E stands for electronics. So if I have a pure cable harness manufacturer, he is not, in my opinion, an EMS. That doesn't mean that cable harnesses are not done by EMS. They are a side business. Yeah, you have them. Yeah, but if there is a company who does cable harnesses only, I cannot put them in into my statistics. It would be too much. I'd say there are at least about 300 to 400 companies in Europe who do cable harnesses only. Yeah, and that on top of the 2,200 would be simply too much. The same goes for example, pure metal sheet fabricators. They do metal sheets, sheet metal fabrication as a service as well. So, but and we have EMS companies who do that. I think I sent you over an example. Hansa Electronics in Sweden. They are a big EMS with revenues of more than 200 million euros, which equals nearly 240 million US dollars. But if you look at the factories, they have a factory in Estonia, they have a factory in Czechoslovakia, and they have two factories in Sweden, which only do sheet metal fabrication. And I leave the revenues of such factories totally out of the picture. I do not collect them. To me, the definition is very easy. An EMS is a company that in the first priority assembles PCBs, does PCBA manufacturing, and on top it can do engineering in the front, it can do box building. You've seen this one picture where I showed all the different processes that are possible in the total manufacturing depths of a company who is working in the EMS business. I think there is even a few companies, yes, that's it, exactly. There's even a few companies who do PCB manufacturing as part of the business. And you see as well, there is wire harnesses, cable assemblies, well, very important, product design, product engineering, circuit design, all of that is part of the total process, and it ends with packing, distribution, and as well a repair service and the customer complaint service organization. So all of that can be done by an EMS company, and that is what I am analyzing. And if someone does not, or does have a factory which doesn't do this, then I do not take it in.
Yeah. So let me go back to my question. We've done this before, Dita, I know. Here's a list that you had of that. So yes. For Europe, you define Europe in a traditional way. So the things that, and you see it over here where it stops. So where it jumps into Asia over here in Istanbul and Turkey.
Yes. Well, see, what most people do not know, there is only a certain part of Turkey is part of the geographical definition of Europe. Yep. And this part of Turkey, which is west of the Bosphorus, about 100 years ago was called Thrace. And the mainland of Turkey is called Anatolia. And Anatolia is part of the Near East. It is not part of the geographical definition of Europe. So I do only exclude 8 companies, EMS companies in my work in Thrace, which is west of the Bosporus, mainly in the suburbs of Istanbul. Yeah? Other than that, there is a cut. I have just decided that I'm going to take out those 3 companies in Belarus, which are in brackets anyhow. As a matter of protest, I'm going to ignore Belarus in the future on kidnapping the Ryanair plane. Yeah?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well,
yeah. So,
way to take a stand. So
yeah, it's ridiculous.
But this listing, listing here was from April of last year. So I know that you always provide updates for it here. And so this, I think, is the most current.
Yes, I could actually update this chart every 2 weeks or every week, because there are so many changes. And I have to admit, I'm not always up to date. It is not possible to keep up with nearly 2,200 companies every week. Yeah. So it can happen that once in a while I only notice that the company is gone, closed down after 12 months. Yeah. But anyhow, I try to be as accurate as possible.
Good. So so again, so to define it, it has to be within Europe proper as defined for your data set. It has to be essentially doing PCBA as a core service.
Yes.
Understanding it may do others. You explained on how you source your data out of the required company registers there in the various countries in Europe. So taking all of that, what are the different metrics that you're able then to reflect out of that? What do you report on then in your data sets? Other numbers, you can do sizing, you can do profitability.
First of all, what I do is I track revenues and headcount, because those are the 2 most important data I can get out of the company registers. And you can imagine, as I mentioned, I only have the revenues of the big companies, but the big companies account for more than, I think, 84% of the European revenues. And I always have to watch out that I don't say market. It's not market, it is production value. Market I have to deduct everything that is being exported out of Europe, and I have to add everything that is being imported into Europe.
Mhm.
Now, the revenues that are exported out of Europe are, I'd say, 1 to 2 million. I don't know that exactly.
Yeah.
I see it once in a while when I read the annual reports, and then they say, well, we are supplying 1 billion of our revenues to the United States or so. Yeah, but
Mhm.
I cannot totally track that. And in regards to the imports into Europe, I get a feeling for that when I read international annual reports from Far Eastern companies, because they normally have in their annual reports pointed out how much of their revenues go to Europe and how much go to the United States.
Yeah.
So I can roughly estimate this, but my main data is production data. How much is being produced in Europe? And as I said, 84% is coming directly from the P&L of the big companies. And then there is the medium-sized companies where I not necessarily find this directly, but I have to read the reports that goes along with it. And in many cases, it is mentioned in the report how much the revenues were. If it is not, I have to make an estimation based on the gross profit, assuming a certain material content, which is something which is relatively constant. And there are other ways as well, which I do, for example, for the smaller companies, which only do the balance sheet. But as I do an annual survey every year, I do get a lot of revenues from companies where I normally would not see the revenues directly in the company registers. And this year, 191 companies participated in the annual survey, and they report their revenues to me, which automatically go into my database. And then gives me already a picture which is more than 90% accurate. And then I have many very small companies which only report the balance sheets. And with those, I have to look, do they report the debtors in two ways? Do they report the trade debtors separately from the total debtors? That, for example, is very common in the United Kingdom. They, in many cases, report trade debtors separately. And if they do, I can assume average payment terms for this country.
Yeah.
And in the UK, payment terms are between 45 and 60 days. And if I know what the trade debtors is, I can recalculate to the annual revenues. And I do this, and I've done this with companies where I exactly know the revenues to find out how accurate is such a calculation. Yeah. And I found out it works perfect. Yeah. At the end of the day, I can clearly say my EMS production data has probably a deviation from reality of 1 to 2%. So that is the fault ratio I assume on my data. And let's be realistic, nobody else will ever be so stupid to do so much work than I do. Yeah. So in most cases, they take the big ones and they make Pareto analysis, and it's so easy, but it's not as accurate. And I can definitely tell you, in order to do Pareto analysis, you first of all need to know how many players are working in the field. And then you need to know who are the 20% biggest And then you assume the 20% biggest have 80% of the revenues. And I can tell you, I did this calculation, it doesn't work. Yeah. If you do such a calculation, you get to a total deviation of 7 to 10%.
Yeah. Now, thank you for that, and also for mentioning the primary research that you do in the form of the survey, because I think that is an piece to try to be more inclusive of all the companies who may fall under the radar for a lot of people. So, and it makes a good point that you're doing both the primary and secondary research and cross-checking that. But it strikes me that, and you know, I'm an old market researcher. Back in the day, we had a lot of companies. I was with Technology Forecasters, who I think was one of the leading ones in the day. And we would do annual sizing of the industry, right? We would establish a total available market, and then we'd look at the EMS in the different regions and the MS revenue, and we talk about it that way. It strikes me that while you report a lot of your own metrics, some of those metrics, for example, the penetration, well, I think that's a critical one. How big is Europe compared to the EMS industry for the rest of the world? You're dependent on other companies sizing that, right? Sizing what the global market is, because you don't size the global market. You may have an opinion, but you spend enough time digging in and doing Europe.
Yeah.
So, but am I characterizing that correctly?
Well, it is definitely difficult to judge what the European share of the global market is if you don't know exactly what the global market size is. And there are many different numbers flying around, but nobody ever gave an explanation how they derived to the number. If I knew how the number was calculated or estimated, I could better judge how reliable the number was. But I don't. Nobody tells me. Yeah. Yeah. So the only answer you get is, well, we have hard facts. Yeah, really hard facts. That's it. Yeah. Now, we have to, and just to take one example, some of the researchers do top lists as well. And I just, I've seen already 2 top lists this year. The first one I saw did have, for example, Jabil with all of their revenues in it. Now, if you read the annual report of Jabil, then you will see that they have an EMS section and they have a DMS section, Diversified Manufacturing Service. The Diversified Manufacturing Service got nothing to do with electronics at all. Yeah. So how can I count the revenues of this part of Jabil to calculate the global market? It's not possible. Yeah. In this case, by the way, I can use global market, and I don't have to say global production value because on a global base it is similar. Yeah. So that is just one example. But for example, then they take all of the revenues of Flex. Yeah. And Flex as well has certain sections which got nothing to do with electronics as well. Yeah. And just to give you an example from my side, if you look at the homepage of Flex, you will see that they have a German facility as well. But the German facility in Filderstadt, south of Stuttgart, is just doing engineering and design work. So they don't manufacture PCBAs. And as they don't manufacture PCBAs, I do not count their revenue in my annual revenues. And that is just one example. And that one example, in 2019, they did $30.8 million US dollars in revenues, which is not counted on my side. So I cannot compare my number to the full number of all Flex revenues. Another example is Videoton in Hungary. They have a total of 7 factories. I only calculate or include in my numbers the revenues of 3 factories, because they are doing, 2 factories are doing electronics, and 1 is doing plastics for electronic equipments for the box building. Yeah. So the difference is more than 300 million compared to this top list. There are other examples, and I could talk about that endlessly. I think I sent you yesterday an example in regards to a Thailand EMS called HANA Microelectronics. Well, the list says that they did 450 million US dollars in 2020, an 11.2% jump. Now, sorry, I just had a look at the annual results which were published on the internet, and see, one shouldn't just take numbers from a company which are sent over with a questionnaire for granted. You have to question the numbers, you have to check the numbers. I have this problem in Europe as well, that companies report higher numbers just to make sure that they get a better positioning in the ranking. It's ridiculous, it's childish, yeah? But it happens.
Yeah, listen, and you know, and for the audience watching this, you know, I felt it important to go through the process piece, because when we're talking about market research, it's really kind of the how you define it and the discipline you bring to that research that influences the outcome. And I think that's an important piece to understand, especially in regards to the work now that Dita is doing in Europe, which I have a lot of respect for. So I'd like to maybe at this point transition into what might be more exciting and newsworthy for our audience and talk about some of the content of what you do.